Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new episode of the Myles High Pod. This is Myles Monroe Jr., your host. Always grateful when you're tuning in. As you know on the pod, the vision and purpose of this pod is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist. Always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. It's good to be on this new pod. I wanted to share one of my great hobbies, and that has to do with reading. I really and truly enjoy reading. Now, I'll be honest with you. I wasn't a reader. I wasn't always a reader. You know, like how you have those kids that grow up and their head is always stuck in a book, and they grow up reading books and stuff like that. That wasn't me. I did enjoy reading. Not that I couldn't read. It's just that whenever I read, I would just like fall asleep sometimes. Maybe most of the time, right? I would maybe get a page or two in, and then all of a sudden I wake up. And I guess used to be like, man, maybe this, this just isn't entertaining enough, or like the book I'm reading, or like whatever the case. But as I got older, I guess as I matured a bit, really gained a love for reading, and I do a lot of it now. And I do a lot of my reading mainly now through audiobooks. I truly enjoy audiobooks. I'm able to digest a lot of my reading content through listening to the books. I find that very informative for me. It's very entertaining for me. I'm able to retain a lot of the information, and I'm able to get through the books much faster. So I truly enjoy opportunities that I get to read. I read a lot when I say read, obviously I'm listening to these various books. But I read a lot when I'm in the gym. That's one of the main times I'm reading. I know you may think that's crazy, right? Because I guess a lot of people listen to music and stuff, like something that gets them going and keeps them motivated while they're in the gym. And I do that from time to time. I do listen to music in the gym, but it's a time where I am able to digest a lot of reading content. It's either in the gym or when I travel. I travel quite a bit, so when I'm moving through airports or on a plane or whatever, I use that time to read. Truly enjoy reading, man. And the types of books that I like to read are either mainly self-help books or books that has to do with business or business persons. And I'm not fond of fiction books or non-fiction books and stuff like that. Novels, not a fan of novels, but I like books that I can use and get information from that I can apply to my life and apply to things that I'm doing. So I'm saying all of this to encourage you. If you are not a reader, there are a lot of ways that you can consume content, and I think you should try your best to figure out which way of consuming content works for you. But reading is important. I think it's imperative to growth. It's a great way to gain new information, learn new skills, and just be aware of different things that exist, right? So I encourage everyone to read, man. If you don't like to read physical books, figure out a way, right? There's a lot of, you have podcasts now that gives information, which is, I guess, is not really reading, right? But yeah, just find ways to consume information that advances your life, advances your thinking, advances your mindset. Cool. All right, just wanted to share that. Today, I want to tackle the topic of legacy and legacy building. I'm always eager to discuss, or happy to discuss, this particular topic, simply because I've been able to witness this particular topic firsthand, right? My dad was an individual that created and built a very long-lasting legacy, and for me to have come into that while he was alive and working with him, and now kind of carrying that on while he is no longer here, it has a real sentimental place in my heart, and I see the importance of it, and I think it's something that we all should aspire to do. And I just wanted to discuss sort of the stigmas behind legacy and legacy building, and just to give you a different perspective maybe on how to look at it, right? So I was looking up the definition of legacy, right? Because when I think of legacy, and my wife and I was having this conversation about the subject, and I was asking her, like, what does she think legacy is? And she's here as well, so I'm sure she's going to jump in on this conversation. But to her, like, a legacy was anything that you leave behind, right? So that could be like some funds, some properties, or like physical assets, or that type of stuff that you leave behind. And I'm like, personally, I think legacies are a bit more larger than that, or a bit more intangible than that. So we were kind of going back and forth on it. So obviously we went to the Google, and we looked up the definition of legacy, and sure enough, we both were right. So legacy, from a definition, is based on long-lasting impacts of an event or an action on an individual or a group of individuals. Legacy also has to deal with an amount of money or property left behind or willed to someone. So we both were right. The latter of that definition I was kind of surprised of, because when I think of like stuff that you leave behind for someone, or you will to someone, I think of it more so of like being an inheritance, right? But I get the understanding where it's someone's legacy, right? It's something that I have been able to create through my lifetime, and I'm leaving it now for either my kids or some individuals that I've appointed to receive said asset or whatever is willed to them, and they can make use of it. But essentially, legacy is simply leaving your mark, right? And it's leaving your mark on your family first, right? So whether your spouse or your kids, your parents, if they're still around when you pass, or your aunts, uncles, cousins, friends, community, it's leaving your mark on individuals, right? And I like to use the term of reproducing yourself, right? So is a form of giving information, experiences, and all of these things that we've been able to create and collect over our lifetime, and not taking it with us when we leave, and it's giving it to simply the next generation, right? So it's leaving your mark, right? So think about like when you were growing up. I'm sure all of us have an experience where we can say, man, this individual impacted my life so much that it caused me to do X, Y, Z, right? And that could have been a teacher, that could have been a pastor, that could have been a family friend. It's just individuals who have like given information, given insight, shared with you, or shared with your family, or whoever it is. They impacted you so greatly that it caused you to positively make a decision that has affected your life for the better, that has gotten you to the position that you're in now, simply because of what they did back then. And I think all of us can point out like a school teacher in particular. I think during our time in school, I think we're susceptible to influences, right? And having those positive influencers in our lives, like our teachers or our guidance counselors, or our parents or an aunt, an uncle, or a cousin, those individuals that speak positivity into our lives, and the impact that they leave, right? So think of those persons and the impact that they left. Like that's leaving a legacy. Like their impact has left such an imprint on you and your life that you now think much more larger, much more greater than you probably were thinking when you were younger or in the past or whatever. So I want to kind of pool the question around the room. Got my team here, so I wanted everyone to join in on the conversation. And I simply want to ask, like, what is legacy to you? So start with my wife with this particular question. Like, what do you think from leaving a legacy or building a legacy? How does that what does that mean to you?
I think leaving a legacy basically means leaving your mark, leaving something that people remember you by, are inspired by. You've helped people to grow, and it could be more than just buildings. It can be ideas, thoughts, community service, values, ethics, morals. It's just something that someone will always remember you by.
Yeah, and it's ironic that a building could be a legacy, right? A house could be a legacy. Money can be a legacy. Various real estate investments can be a legacy. An investment portfolio can be a legacy. Like anything that you're able to build up while in your lifetime, you can pass down as a legacy. Values can be a legacy, right? My wife and I was having this conversation, and she was telling me how her aunt instilled like family values into her and into her family, and it has created a long lasting legacy of her aunt, who is no longer here with us, right? But you remember them because of that values, or those values that they would have left behind. And when you think of like legacy builders or people that have left a large legacy, you think of a few examples, or I have a few examples like I want you to think about, right? And in the Bahamas, we have individuals like Sir Milo Butler, Sir Lyndon Pinland. On a more global scale, we have individuals like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and those would be persons who have passed, right? But you have individuals who are still with us, who have left legacies. So you don't have to have died or no longer be with us on this earth to have a legacy, right? And you think of persons like Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, right? The legacy that Michael Jordan has left and has created is one that has transcended generations, right? Like, think about it. Michael Jordan started his professional career in the 80s, right? I think it was 84 is when he started, and the year now is 2023, and his name is still mentioned. He's still mentioned amongst the greats within the NBA. He's mentioned within sneaker culture because of what brand Jordan has been able to create. So the legacy that he has built and that he is still creating, I think is phenomenal, right? And I think we should all aspire, not maybe to leave such large of a legacy, but like I said, to figure out the mark that we want to leave, whether that's on our families and the values and the characteristics that we want to pass on to our kids. Because I think about my dad and the legacy that he left, and yes, it's a great legacy, but I cherish more the legacy that he has left personally with me, right? And that's from me being able to sit with him and be mentored by him and have conversations with him, observing his character, observing his mannerisms within the rooms, the many rooms that he would be in and out of, the many hats that he wore, the way he managed people, the way he dealt with conflict. All of these things are are values and morals that he taught me, passed down to me, and that I constantly think about on a daily basis, right? So the legacy that you leave behind, it could be something as simple as teaching your kids life principles that will cause them to be better individuals as they mature and develop into adults, and as they have their own families and are able to pass those same values and those same morals on to their kids and their families, right? So me and my wife was having this conversation, right? And we were talking about, so we were highlighting, you know, different individuals that would have left a legacy. Because you have people like, you know, Steve Jobs, people like, she would say Beyonce. You know, she's a Beyonce fan. She wouldn't let me have this conversation unless I mentioned Beyonce. So Beyonce has a great legacy, right? I think persons like Michael Jackson, you know, has a legacy, has a great legacy. Then you have persons like Rosa Parks, who her intention may not have even been to leave a legacy, right? But the decision that she made has left such a strong legacy behind that we still call her name to this day, right? But then you have individuals who, so then we got on at least I brought up the conversation of, well, are all legacies positive, right? Like, does everyone that leaves a legacy always leave a positive legacy, right? And I brought up, you know, scenarios like, you know, serial killers, persons who would have brought some type of trauma or destruction in different communities, like around the world, right? And you had these stories and these of these persons who just brought destruction, man. But it's still, to me, it's still a legacy that they leave, right? It's still the mark that they have left on the lives of individuals that is going to affect them and go with them until they pass. But I think, you know, babe, I guess you have a different perspective to whether legacies can or should be, you know, positive or negative.
I don't think we should call it a legacy per se, because when we talk about legacy, it's more of a positive, you know, positive things that people look at or leave behind. So I don't know if legacy is the right word to a serial killer leaves behind. That's more infamy than legacy, I guess.
Yeah, but I think it's one and the same, you know.
Well, I mean, let's think about it. Like, a lot of people say recent school shootings or shootings in America, a lot of people try to humanize these serial killers. And I feel like that's where we go wrong, because they're not leaving anything positive behind. It's destruction. Like, why would we even want to think of them in a positive light? Like,
I mean, I don't think it's thinking of them. It may not be. Let me not say definitive.
Oh, I mean, I guess it could be the way you frame a excuse me, a quote unquote white person excuse me, versus a black person, because we see it all the time where if a young boy, you know, something happens to him versus a white boy, the framing of their crimes are different. It's more, oh, he was a Ivy League student, or this person was a thug. So I guess, you know, it's all how we frame the narrative. So I think it's up to us to say, well, that's not legacy, that's infamy, or that's something different.
But I think that's the nuances when we get to talking about, you know, how we view each other in society, right? Or how one aspect of society views another aspect of society, mainly like whites and blacks, right? But in this legacy discussion, I do think that, you know, whether positive or negative, you do leave a legacy. I think your legacy can be both. And, you know, obviously we should aspire to leave positive legacies behind. But, you know, that isn't the case all the time. And, like, you know, the serial killer who
Jeffrey
Dahmer, who Netflix just released a series of, right? And, you know, he was before our time, right? We wouldn't have really known had an in-depth look about, you know, who he was and like the things that he did. But that series opened our eyes to how wild, you know, and the type of person that he was, and how many wild things like he was doing and got away with, right? Primarily because he was a white guy, right? And you know, that just speaks to how society views individuals. And you know, whether positive or negative, you know, I think it's still a legacy that is left behind, because if it wasn't, you know, I don't think there would be interest in documenting, you know, creating a network series about, you know, Jeffrey and what he did and the people around him and how he got to this point. Like, I understand the point of like trying to humanize these individuals. And I think it takes away from the damage and trauma that they may have caused. And I think that's fair to say, especially to the family members that are still here and still dealing with, you know, that loss and those traumas. But I you know, at the fundamental level of it, I think like that's his legacy. Like this is the mark that he left. This is what he's known for. And I think like legacy is important, right? When I visualize like leaving a legacy, right, I think of a seed, right? And I use the seed example quite a bit and quite often because it's such a relatable example, right? We've all seen a seed and we know what seeds do and how they produce, right? And you know that inside a seed is the potential to produce a tree. And that tree has the potential to produce fruit, and that fruit has seed that has the potential to produce tree and fruit. And you go through this ongoing process of seed planting and fruit harvesting that creates a legacy, right? And that's just how a legacy is formed, right? You plant the seed, and as that seed germinates and grows into a tree and fruits are produced, then you start to see like other trees pop up because of the fruit that was produced by that initial tree. And that's how we should look at our lives, right? And I look at my dad and the seeds that he has planted throughout his lifetime to the individuals that he has planted those seeds with. And I have conversations all the time with these individuals, and I'm just able to continuously see the impact and the influence that he has had, not only on myself, right, but from persons who, you know, don't have never met him in person, persons who have never even listened to him in person, right? The only connection that they have to him is through reading one of his books or listening to one of his teachings. And just think of how great of a legacy that has been left behind because of him not wanting to die with all of this information and all of these things inside of him, right? Like, what a legacy he's left behind. And it inspires me to like want to do the same, right? So in creating and doing this podcast and continuously like sharing myself, sharing my ideas, my experiences, bringing, you know, folks on this podcast to do the same. This is a form of legacy building, right? Because this is going to live on long after I'm gone, right? And hopefully it's still able to impact and influence others. So this is a part of legacy building, right? So when we talk about legacy building, you know, there are steps that we can follow, or a mindset that we can have when we talk about building a legacy. And I think the first thing that you need to determine is what type of legacy you want to build, right? Do you want to have a legacy built off of money, or a monetary legacy? Do you want to have a legacy based off of information and values that you share, content that you share? Do you want to have a legacy built off of character and the type of person that you are and the impact that your character has on others? Do you want to have a legacy based off of, the real estate or the properties that you're able to possess and then pass on, or do you want to have all of the above? Because it's all possible, right? I think at the least, your legacy starts, I feel, in the home, right? Like, what, as a father, as a head of the home, what legacy am I leaving or building for, my wife and my kids? What am I doing to ensure that I'm giving them something, I'm leaving a mark with them? And I think once you make the decision of the type of legacy you want to leave, then you have to start working towards it, right? Do the work, right? It's as simple as that. And just understand that every choice that we make today, it affects the decisions we have to make, or the people that we come into contact with, years into the future. Like, my dad taught me this principle of decision making, right? And it was something that left such an impact on me once I understood and grasped the principle, that I try to, I do it as often as I'm able to, right? And we would have like a lot of, and I've talked about this before, we have a lot of, as an organization, or him as the lead of an organization, there'd be a lot of decisions that he has to make. And to me, sometimes the decision on surface level looks like super simple, right? It's a simple yes or no. Either we're going to do this or not going to do it. We're going to get involved. We're not going to get involved. We're going to pay this. We're not going to pay that, right? And sometimes he would take forever to make these decisions. And I would be like, yo, Dad, like, why do you have to take so long? Like, I don't understand why you just can't make a decision. Because I'm looking at it like in today's time where, there's a timeline for this decision. There are things that once the decision is made, whether positive or negative, there comes an effect, right? So there are things that fall into place once these decisions are made. And I'm like, I'm looking at the timelines, I'm looking at the other things that has to happen. Like, let's make the decision as soon as possible. And for him, it would just be like, at first he just used to be, I'm take my time, I'm almost there. I'll give you my decision when I make it. And eventually, like, we started to have the conversations, and I think one day I just kind of asked, like, why do you take so long to make decisions? And he told me that when I'm making a decision, whether it's for my personal life or my professional life in the businesses that I'm in, I'm not just thinking of me when I make decisions, right? I'm thinking of, if it's personal, I'm thinking of my son, my daughter, and my wife, and my extended family as well. If it's in the business, I'm thinking of everyone that is involved in the business and how this decision is going to affect them, 5 to 10 years into the future. Like, think about, the simplest decision that you may have to make, right? And you're not just thinking about that decision and how it affects today. You're thinking about how that decision affects tomorrow, how it affects next week, how it affects next month, how it affects next year, how it affects 10 years from now. And after he told me that, I was like, you know what? I get it, because it makes complete sense, right? Because sometimes we're so quick, and I used to be this type of person, right? I was so quick to make decisions. A lot of my decisions may have used to be based off of emotions, right? And how I'm feeling at the time, not taking into consideration the effect of that decision when I don't feel the way that I feel right now. Like, will I regret it? Is this something that I'm going to wish that I didn't do, or I took more time with, right? And I never want to get into that state. So I'm always being patient with my decision making. And that's one thing that he taught me. And I think when it comes to legacy building, like thinking about the decisions that we have to make so that we make sound decisions is very important, right? Because, I mentioned this quote in one of my past pods. Our life is a sum total of our choices, right? When we were talking about the BCDs, right? Your birth and your death, and in between there's that C, and those are the choices that we make, and that pretty much determines the trajectory of our life and how and what our life is gonna turn into. And so once we determine the type of legacy we want to create, and you know, whether that be one branch of a legacy, or we want to, you know, affect the entire tree, all the branches, and affect or build this legacy as many ways, into as many different avenues as we can, and then we start doing the work. I think the third step that we need to take is succession planning. And that has to do with, like, who are we leaving these things to? Like, who are we putting these values into? Who are we showing our character to? Who are we teaching character build to? Who are we trusting with leaving this money behind, right? Like, you know, like, there are a lot of wealthy people who say that they don't want to leave their wealth, that the wealth that they have attained, to their kids. That's the wildest thing to me, right? And then when you like listen to some of them talk, it's because a lot of them don't think that their kids understand the value of money, or the value of the time and effort and energy that it took for them to amass this wealth, right? And you know, I look at it as, well, the onus is on you, right? Because you have to instill these values into your kids. But then, you know, at the same time, I guess the kid has to be open to wanting to understand that aspect of it too. But when it comes to like succession planning, it's really identifying the individual or individuals who are going to be able to carry on and move forward with this legacy, with these things that you're going to be leaving behind, be it intangible or be it tangible, right? It has to be someone that understands what it took to get to this point, and that has the vision to move it forward. And I think, you know, if each of us can look to answer the question of what is it that I want to leave behind? What's this mark, right? And that mark could be super relative, right? So you don't have to be a business owner or to own a company to leave a legacy, right? You can leave a legacy as an employee of a company working in a department, but you're so fixated on leaving your mark, right? Where you're getting certifications and learning as much as you can within that industry, within that sphere of your leadership, and then you're training and mentoring those individuals that are around you, that are either your direct reports or just the persons that you are able to influence and impact, teaching them what you know, giving them the ins and outs of the business, right? And when you're no longer there, like, they can now take over and be like, man, I remember when Myles taught me this principle or this work tactic within this company, and because of what he taught me, like, I moved out of this department and I'm now like running the company or running a department. You know, like, you can literally leave a legacy anywhere. When we talk about family, it's, you know, like my wife said, like, her aunt had such of an impact on her life and the values that she left behind. And, you know, I've never met her aunt, but because I know her and I'm able to have like conversations with her, like, I can imagine the type of person that her aunt was. And like, that's legacy. That's being able to have a conversation with someone and they continuously talk about someone and the impact that they had on their lives. And then you're able to relate to that because you see them, you see the values in, you know, the person that's here, the person that's in front of you. But those values were imparted in them from someone in the past, right? And persons who are in our now may not meet these legacy builders or these legacy creators, but they will know of them because of us, right? The people that were impacted. And I think that's, you know, that's what we should aspire to do. You know, my dad, like I said earlier, like, it's all about reproducing yourself. And that's a term my dad always used. Like, you know, like, you should be working to reproduce yourself, continuing to reproduce everything that you are, everything that you've learned, everything that you have within you, and giving that to someone else or a bunch of other individuals. And it leaves a legacy, because your name will never not be mentioned, once you're no longer here. Martin Luther King, right? Has passed away or was killed many years ago. We still call his name today. And I'm just name your favorite historian, right? Or historic figure. There are just many these individuals who have left such an impact on our lives that I feel like we just can't forget them. We can't not call them. We can't not mention like what the impact that they've had, the legacy that they've left behind. So I just wanted to use this particular episode to just kind of try and persuade you, those who may not think like I'm not doing anything, I'm not capable of leaving a legacy. You absolutely are. And I think you just have to determine what it is you want to leave behind and just work at it. And yeah, that's kind of what it is. Babe, any questions, any comments?
No, I think, do you have any questions?
Anyone else in the crew? Everyone quiet today. All right, that's cool. Well, I mean, like I say, this was a pretty simple and straightforward topic that I wanted to discuss. I'm big on legacy. I'm working my butt off now to ensure that I'm able to leave not just things, right? I don't want to just leave tangible things. I want to leave impacts, right? And impartations on the lives of individuals, the way that I know I'm capable of, right? And it has a lot to do with just continuing to share my thoughts, my experiences, things that I've learned, and continue to share my life. Hopefully I'm able to reproduce myself through the process, and just want to encourage you to do the same. All right, so this is part of the episode now where we're discussing a milestone, and this is my opportunity to leave something with you that you're able to just kind of go off and think about and apply to your lives, right? And today's milestone has to do with people, and we should always focus on not just ourselves, right, but reproducing ourselves in others, being consistent with that reproduction. I think everything that we've learned and we've experienced in life, if it dies with us, I think we've failed. I think the aspirations that we have, or one of the aspirations that we should have in life, is to reproduce ourselves in someone else. And I think that encourages legacy building. So if you want to leave a legacy, the focus should be to reproduce what's inside of you into others. All right? And that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoyed this. I love this conversation about legacy building. Leave a comment or a question below this video or below this audio, wherever you're consuming this pod. But thank you for tuning in. As you know, my goal is always to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may feel exist. Always keeping in mind that those limitations only exist in your head. All right? So until next time, you guys stay blessed.